All right, everybody, welcome to a special edition of Daily Gooner Pod. I'm Raphael, joined here by Sam. On this Thursday, some intriguing news that's caused a lot of stir among the Arsenal faithful and sadly kind of revitalized some myths around the club and their finances. If you have not heard it this morning, it was announced that Arsenal have taken out a £120 million loan from the government, the English government, the UK government, to fund the short-term club operations. Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, this is a 5-month loan that's supposed to be repayable by May.
Correct.
And what that's seemingly done is kicked up a lot of people who have misconceptions or who do not like KSE, don't like the Crankies, have taken this and kind of slotted it into their favorite myths about the club mismanaging and the club spending money. You know, they're not happy about the buys or the market or just the Crankies in general, or, coming less than a year after the club furloughed or actually laid off a lot of scouting staff and a lot of daily staff who were necessary to the day-to-day operations of the Emirates on match day. As we know, Sam, there are no matches, there's no need for staff. But this seems similar but different, does it not?
Yeah, correct. With this one, it's more around the operational costs. So essentially this will be for the players being paid, the background staff, Mikel and his coaching staff, and just generally the operational staff to continue the day-to-day work that happens around the club. So in terms of this loan, it is a real short, immediate loan. But what we see on Twitter or any social media, actually, and because you're very well versed in American sports, is the continuous abuse, you can put it much down to, about KSE. So I just want to ask some questions around the American sports. So we'll start with the Rams first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
With KSE. A lot of Arsenal fans say that he is taking money out of Arsenal Football Club and directing that to the Rams. I suppose in layman's terms, is this possible for KSE to do?
No, and if you indulge me for just a minute, I'm going to pull up my calculator and give you some numbers. I know officially we don't have them on the screen, but I'm going to have to put all the zeros in here. I'm sure I have too many. Nope, there we go. How many is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, 8 zeros. All right, here we go. Now, that myth has been around for a while, and it comes from the fact that at one point, I believe it was Stan Kroenke paid himself paid himself a £3 million pound consultant fee. Is that correct? And that was when the Rams were at the time the Rams were building a new stadium. And the myth that I've heard several times, and I've seen it online and I've talked to people about it, that says they're using it and they're funneling it to the Rams to pay for the Rams, and they're taking it out of the operation costs, and they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. All right, so let's start with some basic facts here. All right, number one, KSE makes its money from the operation of sports clubs. KSE owns 5 clubs, 4 in America in 3 of the major sports, and an MLS, which is a far smaller, a budget that's just a tiny fraction of what Arsenal's is, and of course Arsenal Football Club. So in that totem, they have their portfolio. They have the Rams, who are the most valuable. Arsenal are the second most valuable. They also have 2 clubs that are in Denver, the Colorado Avalanche, which are in the National Hockey League, and then they have the Denver Nuggets, who are in the NBA, the National Basketball Association. All right, the Rams are the most valuable. Arsenal are the second most valuable. All right, but understand, £3 million is a drop in the ocean. The Rams this year opened a $4.2 billion stadium that they've been constructing for some time. It's called SoFi Stadium. It's in Los Angeles. It's beautiful. Arsenal players visited it when it was under construction 2 summers ago when they toured the United States. Now, let's do some simple math, okay? The Crunkies financed that. They got some loans, but they're trying to finance it themselves. It's a jewel. NFL headquarters, the NFL offices, or the NFL channel for the entire league are an office space that's part of that stadium's complexes. So the Crunkies have a lot of ancillary revenue streams. That stadium also has a small 10,000 seat concert venue, which can hold musical concerts. There is a shopping mall that's connected to that. All right. So the 4.2 billion for the entire complex. 3 million is, I'm going to pull it up for you here. Oh, where's my calculator? It went away. I have the wrong one. Sorry, Sam, I pulled it up. Oh, here it is. It is 7/1000th of 1%. Okay.
Oof.
That might buy a concession stand in that stadium. That might pay for a concession stand. Okay, so that's number one. The math just doesn't add up. Why would you take money from your second largest club to pay for your first largest club? Doesn't make any sense in the short term. Number two, let's look at the NFL finances. All right. The NFL, all the American leagues, all 4 of those American leagues operate under a salary cap. All right. Now, there's no caps on wages in the Prem. Arsenal could, if they wanted to, spend crazy. A lot of fans want them to spend crazy, like say Chelsea does or City does, where they use petrodollars or whatever Roman Abramovich's source of revenue is, aluminum or whatever, and they don't care about losses. They just write them off. Arsenal's never worked that way. The Crunkies don't work that way. But in the American leagues, they have certain numbers every year that they are allowed to spend on player salaries, and that's tied to league revenue. Leagues get money from television, just like the Prem does. They get it from the box office, and we know that with all the leagues, most of it comes from television, but a lot of it comes from the gate, day concessions, merchandise sales, and just having people in the stands, right? Well, all of the sports are having the same problems, right? With COVID, it's true in England, it's true in the United States. None of these franchises can seat people, all right? So, but the idea that money would be taken from Arsenal and sent to the Rams is folly for one reason, that in a league where you have a limited amount of money, the owners look very, 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 they're always looking for a club that might be looking for a way to get around this and gain a competitive advantage by funneling money in and basically making their cap bigger than everybody else's. And this system has been in play. I'll just give you a real quick history lesson. It's been in place since 1994. And when it first started, the San Francisco 49ers were one of the best teams in the league. They went to the Super Bowl last year. They kind of have it up and down. But at that point, they were competing for championships on a regular basis. And they signed a star player named Deion Sanders, cornerback from Atlanta, to a lot of money. And they got him on a 1-year contract in this new system. And the very next year, he was going to go back into the market. And the 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys, who were their main rivals, were butting heads over how much to pay him. All right. And everybody looked at the cap, because the caps are published and people know how much. We do this now. We see how much players are paid in salary. And it was clear that the 49ers could not pay him that much. They had won the championship with him and they wanted to renew him. And their ownership joked that, like, well, we can pay him a tiny salary and we'll get the rest and we'll pay him. We'll cut a deal with Nike. We'll cut a deal with so-and-so and we'll get him the money that way. And they kind of loosely talked about that. And that got them in a lot of trouble with the league. And Dallas tried something similar, bringing in revenue from agreements outside the league. And they thought, well, we'll use that to buy players. And the other owners said no. And in fact, when Cowboys owner Jerry Jones tried that, he cut a deal with, I believe it was Dr. Pepper, when the league had a deal with Coke as a beverage. The league sued him for $300 million because they wanted to prevent clubs from going out this wild, wild west, which we see in the Prem, really, in all the major European leagues, where money can come from anywhere, and it's unaccountable. They stick to that very carefully. So if the Rams were doing this, if they were taking money from Arsenal and funneling it in, it would get them into trouble. It would cost them draft picks, which is, the equivalent to what we saw with City getting the window freeze. Couldn't do that. All right. The Rams are also slated to hold the Super Bowl next year. If you can put a crowd in it, if you can fill the seats, that's that day, that championship game, which is the biggest, the most watched event in the United States any given year, generates hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue. Just that one event. All right. Why would you risk that? That could be taken away from them if they were found to be not in compliance. Over $3 million makes, or £3 million, sorry, about $4.5 million, makes no sense at all. So it's a tired rumor. It comes up, but if you look at the dollars and cents, the risk and the reward is just ridiculous. It's a myth. Let's just put it at that.
Put that in the old myth.
Yeah, and you will see it. And again, I see it. You saw it. It came back today. And just, I think when people are angry and they want to thrash at the Crankies, and when we're saying this, people are gonna say, "Oh, you're defending them and you love them." I don't say I love them or I don't hate them. I mean, I'm kind of agnostic. They're there. And what I tell people, and we need to acknowledge this, is that when you look at the value of those 5 franchises and you look at Stan Kroenke's wealth, KSE's wealth, he's worth more than Roman Abramovich. All right. He's all his money is from his clubs. He's never bought one to flip it. There is a certain gentleman from Africa who appears in the English press about every couple of years that he's going to sell a factory or he's going to buy Arsenal, and he's a lifelong Arsenal fan. And fans bring him up. I forget the gentleman's name, but if you're trying to get fans on your side in the paper, you don't have any leverage. All right. KSE has never purchased a franchise to flip it. They're not flippers. They're not speculators. They buy them and they grow them. So again, to bring the short term and the long term, I just don't see it. It makes no sense.
Yeah. I suppose another question that's been flying around Twitter today is why have Arsenal gone to the government for this funding? Shouldn't KSE potentially be covering this? And if they were to be able to, I seem to see the valuations are big numbers in the billions. With KSE, I would assume the majority of his wealth would be tied up in assets, would it not?
Yeah, we just wonder how much is liquid, and my guess is simply, they say why not go to private? They probably got better rates, better deal from the government. To me, that's probably why they did it. They could get better interest, better terms. It's such a short-term deal, and you borrow money. When you borrow on short term, the rates are pretty high. So I'm guessing if they went to private banks and they looked at the British government and they said, "Oh, the banks here, that's a better deal." And again, it's a 5-month. So what that tells me, I'm hopeful. I mean, I'm sure you're hopeful that they're optimistic that by the end of the season, which is going to come around May, that we'll be looking at an environment where we can seriously contemplate fans back in the seats for the new season, and the revenue they can sell tickets and fans can buy on the expectation that, oh, I'm going to be able to go see Arsenal again on match day in the Emirates and everywhere else too. I'm speculating. I'll be upfront about that, but I'm guessing if it's 5 months, that's their expectation.
Yeah. And with that being 5 months, I think that ties in nicely with all the payouts from the league, sponsorship money, and such other deals like that. It's a time period where the club gets the majority of the regular income, so to speak, the regular winnings from the Europa League standings and things like that. So in terms of that would cover the 120 million. I suppose a lot of people will soon start to ask the question, if we get to May and there's no fans, does this start to affect the summer planning from a KSE perspective?
It might, but I would just say don't look at Arsenal in a vacuum, because if it's affecting Arsenal at the end of May, at the beginning of June, it's affecting everybody else. Because this is really to cover gate revenue. We all know if fans were in the stands, if the Emirates was getting 60,000 every week, they wouldn't have taken this loan. They wouldn't have needed this loan.
No.
And let's remember, Arsenal are not alone on this. You and I were talking about this right before we started this recording. Spurs took out an even larger loan from the same entity just a couple of months ago. So, and they're a big club. Their valuation now with their new stadium is around about Arsenal's. Some people say it's a little higher, some people say it's a little lower, but they're a big club as far as finances and in the financial pecking order. So, if they've got to do it, what's different? As far as everybody can talk about, oh, well, that's a different fan base, or that's a different club. But if you're just looking at pounds, you're in England, you're going to talk in pounds. You're talking in pounds, the situations are the same. Right?
Yeah, it's a situation, and as well as Spurs, the English FA, it emerged today, has gone through the same government funding to get around about £125 million as well. So if the English FA are doing it, we're doing it, and Spurs have got an even larger loan, then there must be some sort of expectation that fans would be coming back. And also, just to touch on the fans coming back, and you briefly touched on that matter, with KSE refinancing the loan for the stadium, we at the pod here understand that the majority of that has been picked up by KSE at a much lower rate of interest, if any interest at all. And the Emirates, once it's got fans back in place, would then effectively be Arsenal's revenue generator.
Yeah, it's something to understand, and this is a topic, again, we probably got 5 minutes, and we don't want to turn this into this long, economics debate, and we probably need to do more research on this. But I'll say this: some people are looking at, and we probably should make a video on this, which is a good idea, on KSE, the way KSE operates. All right, KSE, when Stan Kroenke started with his Denver franchises, because he built his business in Denver. With the Nuggets and the Avalanche. Those were the first two franchises that he purchased. He owns the stadium that they both play in. If you notice, when he built the Rams, he financed the stadium. What he was doing with Arsenal is completing a practice that he has. They own the stadiums, because what that lets them do then, when you own it, you're not renting it, as say West Ham is. When you pay it off, I mean, we can look at Man United as the classic example in the Prem. Old Trafford has been paid off for decades, okay? And owning that facility, which is still the largest, is it not, in England, and certainly in the Prem, it's a cash machine. So even if they fall out of the top four, which they did for a while, that stadium generates so much debt-free revenue that's why they're able to churn through people like David Moyes and fire him and pay £300 million, give the next manager £350 million budget. If he doesn't work out, give Jose Mourinho another 300 million. And now Ollie's got it, and he's getting the money he wants, because it's a machine. All right. So when you own your own stadium, you can put concerts in there. You can put rugby events in there. You can put other events in there. And that's all revenue that goes to your club. That's in your budget. So what if KSC pays off that stadium debt? And I understand we need to look at more of this, if there are limitations on how many events that neighborhood allows. But you imagine if they could put events in the daytime. I think it's an evening thing, that the neighbors don't want loud concerts 20 times a year. But if KSC could start putting summer concerts in there every afternoon during the summer, they'll do it. If they could put auto races, motorcycle races, or they could put rugby events, and they could hold anything that can generate revenue using that facility, they'll do it. That's what they're doing in the US. And I mentioned beginning with KSE that they have shopping malls tied to this. This is something that the Kroenkes have done, is that they diversify. So the team and the stadium is just kind of the hub, but there are all of these other things around it, shopping centers, and they use the stadium as a money generating source. And so, I mean, that is something in the short term, Arsenal's still paying the debt down. But when they do pay it off, and as you said, it shouldn't be that long, that makes the team that much stronger financially. And, you know, they're a private company now. It's all internal, and that rubs a lot of people the wrong way, but it probably gets them closer to being self-sustaining, which is what they want to be in the longer term. And then it just comes down to creativity. How can they leverage the Emirates as a revenue source? And I get them being in London, you know, the opportunities are there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the local council only limited the evening ones to, I think it was 6 or 7 a year.
Yeah.
But even that as you say, it's extra revenue put throughout the year. Just looking at time constraints, I think if we were to wrap it up there, I think that will give the people in Podland, so to speak, a bit more information around KSE.
I think the bottom line today is this shouldn't affect their window. Again, they were looking for loans to begin with. It looks like, and we'll talk about this on the pod, a lot of the names that we've been targeting, that we crave, they're like, please go sign this guy, please go sign this guy. It does seem, I think we were looking at Buendia today, it looks like it's shrinking. A lot of clubs they think this is a bad time to make a sale or a buy. You're seeing everybody's going out on loans or loan with option. And I'm guessing that's what Arsenal's going to do as well. Maybe a player like Sabitzer now becomes a top priority on a loan with an option. But it seems like, I think people are afraid, clubs are afraid, if we sell now in a depressed market, you know, we're cutting it off, because if fans come back next year, next fall, we've sold low on an asset who could have brought us twice as much under regular conditions. So I think that's for everybody, not just Arsenal.
Yeah, indeed. So I think, as I say, we wrap it up here. I'd say thank you to yourself for giving us the information around the American finances, and to the people in Podland. We'll be back on Tuesday.
Yeah, keep following us. Keep following us on Twitter. We're making some changes. You made some dust. We have some new things to roll out, but we'll talk about them on Tuesday. All right.
Indeed.
Take care.
For me, goodbye. For Raf, adios, amigo.
All right. Thank you. Take care, Sam. All right.